Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. I'm your host, Kelly Kessler, and I'm very excited to be joined by Santi Villamil. So thank you so much for being here today.
So glad to be here.
Yes. So we connected over a coaching program like 2 years ago, and it's been just awesome to get to know you and what you do. And I just love your approach and your perspective on things. And I can't wait to dive into that further in this episode.
I can't wait. Yeah, and I love how we met. I love what you're doing right now with your podcast, with your community. I just absolutely love it and what you're doing for women. So it's like, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I know we connected a lot and like diving into like the deeper root causes and everything that goes behind health. And I definitely want to talk about that as we kind of progress today. But the first thing I want to know is, how did you get started and what you do and what brought you along your journey to helping and serving the people that you serve today?
Well, I think in the beginning, when you're a little bit younger, you're in your 20s. I was an athlete. I had this mindset that was like, I'm going to be a pro athlete. I'm going to do all these things. And then I got hurt, so it was like the typical, I got hurt and I didn't know anything about physical therapy. And then when I entered the system, quote unquote, like, ACL surgery, I didn't like how I was being treated. I didn't like how they weren't listening to me. And I was like, hey, these are my goals, guys. What are you doing? That would just put me on the bike, made me do the stupid straight leg raises for forever and all these things. Things have shifted since then, but I've always been one of those individuals that asks why, and I want to make things better for myself and for others. So initially it was just like, hey, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. That was my journey at that point. I'm going to go into athletics and everything. And I said, I didn't realize that physical therapy or healthcare I thought it was just sick people. I thought it was like spinal cord injury or like hospital work. And then I was like, wait, I'm being treated. I don't like how I'm being treated, and I think I can do better. And of course, back in those days, it was the money too. I got the bill. I was like, holy cow, they're charging me this much to do nothing. So I said, I want to figure out more about PT. So that's what got me into physical therapy. I came back to where I live now, Gainesville, Florida. I went to UF and I went to the PT school and I said, hey, what is this all about? Make a long story short, it was God's calling for me to be doing what I'm doing. But because of who I am, as far as like mindset and the way that I like to serve people, I could not stand the fact that once I graduated, I wasn't able to help the clients like I thought I could, or I was expecting to, after spending so much money and time learning from this quote unquote medical school. Make sense? And I started looking at outside the box things, and it started with like some breathing stuff that had to do with like treating baseball players, because I was going to do pro baseball back in those days. And then I decided, you know what, I think there's more to it than just exercise, and I started looking into the emotional component of the athlete, the emotional component of healing, what actually constitutes healing, why aren't we healing? And then over time, all the rabbit holes that I was diving into eventually led me to what I mainly practice right now. I practice as a primary care provider, let's just say, in the frequency medicine world. And diving into that world, it really gave me a holistic approach to how our nervous system actually functions and how we actually heal from the inside out in all aspects of mindset, spirituality, our body. It's all interconnected. That trilogy, it's all connected and it all bounces off each other. It all works together. So that's what I do now. Now I help. Initially, it was going to be athletes, but the plan, the divine intervention plan, was like, Santi, you're here to help women with autoimmune conditions, because nobody was helping them out with what I do. So that's what I've been doing for a while. And then the fact that the profession as a whole and the medical system is not geared to truly help with the healing process. I just call it the sick care system, that term that's out there. I truly believe that. I don't believe in the medical system whatsoever. I think it's great for trauma and maybe orthopedic surgeries, but beyond that, it doesn't do anything for health and well-being. And people can get me mad at me, but that's fine. That's just what I believe in, and this is what I'm here to do. And I love it. I mean, I love giving people the opportunity to truly heal from the inside out And now I know that I'm not ego driven. I'm here to serve others, but mainly to empower them to understand how their bodies work. So that way, then they can be comfortable in their body and understand what their body's telling them and their nervous system is telling them. And then that's, to me, the healing journey is forever. It's not like, hey, I'm fixed. Nope, that's not what I do. I'm like, we're here to just teach you and empower you to understand why your body does certain things, why it falls apart, why it recovers. And the more you understand, and the more you're in tune with your nervous system and what it's trying to tell you, then you never have to be in fear. You really can just be like, okay, I know what's happening, and then you truly know what is a fight or flight, because you're getting attacked, versus like, oh, I got a headache because I drank too much wine last night with my girls, So I mean, that's my journey in a nutshell, from like athletic to like holistic frequency medicine, helping the individual as a whole.
Yeah, I love that. And I can totally relate to what you're saying when it's like you feel so limited. It's like, I think most of us go into this field wanting to help people. You come out and then you're restricted in how you can help people. And it's just like, it doesn't jive. So it's like, I love what you did as far as pursuing further and how you can actually help people, and especially from the inside out, because that's everything. And in my experience, a lot of the medical system is just symptom management versus getting down to the root. And can you talk about that a little bit more? Like, how have you helped people discover their root and empower themselves when much of what they've experienced probably has been very disempowering? So how do you get someone who's come to you that feels like, oh, I'm a mess, all the words that have been used, I'm a mess, this is wrong with me, the red on the diagram, this is what's going on, like all the fear tactics that are used to show people what is wrong with them. How do you take someone who's in that mindset and now empower them to realize that like there's not something wrong with you, it's just that your body is advocating for you and you just need to listen to it?
Exactly. Like the medical system has been set up to disempower you further. And like you said, to block the symptom. So in my world, and what I learned in what we do with neurological oscillations, we tend to basically be born and we're like, boom, ready to go, right? But that actually matters. We can dive into that as well too, because our nervous system gets programmed by our mothers and sometimes even our grandmothers, because the little eggs are in your grandmother and all these different things. So there's something called epigenetics. So there are times that people come in and they're just like, I'm falling apart. Like you said, Santi, I don't know what to do. The doctor told me this, the acupuncturist told me that, they told me this is what's wrong with me. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's awesome that they're giving you information. So I try to acknowledge, but I try to make them understand that I'm like, that has nothing to do with you. It's just information. There's different people giving you different types of information. I'm going to give you different information. So now I just want you to try to gain a perspective of what's actually happening. And what tends to help my individuals and also the students that I mentor is that finding the root cause means that we have to look at every little thing can matter, right? Every little thing can matter, including even our birth and things like that. And people are like, oh, Santi, show me the evidence. And I'm like, well, guess what? I left that world a long time ago. I'm in the world of like innovation and like how I actually function. When as it works, then you guys can do the research and be like, great, Santi, you're right. And I'm like, all right, awesome. It doesn't matter. It's all a team approach. Does that make sense? Yeah. I just rather be in the front end of innovation and understanding the whole of the human being rather than like diving into one little aspect of how we work, and unfortunately that's what we do with science. We try to get rid of all the variables. And when the person comes in with all the different variables that they've been told, all these things are wrong with me, and they think it's all of this, it's a list of like my body's, my autoimmune, my body's fighting against me, I have inflammation, I have my nerves don't like me, my stomach doesn't like me, my food doesn't like me, my sleep doesn't like me, you've probably heard it all, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I look at them and I'm like, okay, that's good. That's what's supposed to happen. We're just not listening to the nervous system. They're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, your body's trying to tell you something, right? So what tends to happen is that in what I've experienced is that there's usually a trauma, whether it's emotional or physical, between 10 to 15, maybe 20 years back. If I'm getting somebody young, if I get a young athlete or a young female or something like that, maybe postpartum or they can't have babies or whatever, Then I look back at like their birth. I'm like, how was your mom? Was she like a nervous wreck? Was she like getting abused during her pregnancy or something? Because your nervous system is being programmed by her nervous system, is getting you ready for a fight or flight environment. So now you're cortisol driven, that's all you know. And I explained it as far as like God gives you a luxury vehicle.
Mhm.
And then sometimes we come out and we're like, I've got this luxury vehicle. And then we jump into a Daytona 500 race,
Mhm.
full RPMs, no pit
Yep.
stops, nothing like that. And then 15 to 20 years later, things like the tires don't work, right? Oh, I got a daily headache. Oh, my stomach when I eat X, Y, and Z, right? So that's when I explain that to them, then they're like, oh, okay, it's not all in my head. I'm not crazy. Because they're recognizing that, like, you know what, my mom died about 10 years ago and that was so stressful. And I'm like, well, your body was balanced. And then all of a sudden there's one little, and then all of a sudden now it was out of balance. Biochemistry was imbalanced. And then all of a sudden now you have cancer. And now the doctor told you have all these things wrong with you, or now you have fibromyalgia, or now you have Hashimoto's. It doesn't, to me, most of those diagnoses don't actually matter to me. And people are like, oh, I'm like, it doesn't matter. I just call it inflammation. I just call it out of balance.
Yeah.
We just got to get everything back into balance, and the root cause is usually a neurological stressor, trauma, however you want to call it, whether it was emotional or physical, that tweaked our biochemistry, where your body couldn't keep up. And then those little free radicals start winning and they start overtaking a specific system. And then that's what we diagnose people with,
Yeah.
So I hope
Yeah.
that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And I love your explanation of that. And it's like, I love how you talk about how it's not just what's going on in the immediate present time. And it's like, we have to look at all these other variables and the things that impact us, because a lot of times we don't realize that the past is still with us because of all these emotional dysregulation that's caused. And then that again feeds into all the hormones released, and your body starts learning a cycle, a pattern, and it goes from a thought to emotion to a physiological thing. And then we don't realize that like it's all intertwined in how we're experiencing it. And so many things ride below the surface because we're in that survival mode. And we don't realize that we're functioning in a way that's very maladaptive in the big scheme of things. So no, I love your description of that, and that you get to that, because I think when I was seeing so many people I've worked with just don't get that explanation, don't get the idea that, the cancer or the fibromyalgia or the autoimmune disease is linked to so many other things that have happened along their life. And so when they don't have this information and don't realize that there is a deeper root cause, they are just kind of grasping at straws to kind of fix quote, fix the problem. And it's like, it never happens. So when they go to 17 million doctors, all these appointments, injections and procedures, and then they come back and then instead of blaming, they blame themselves for not being able to heal. And it creates that cycle. And now what's the emotion? You're in those low emotions, shame, guilt, all those low emotions that keep the cycle going. And it's all that. And so I just love your explanation of the nervous system, how that plays in the epigenetics and how it goes even beyond your life, but into your family and genetics that play a role in that. So
and there's a misconception that it's like sick people. Like not really, like we shouldn't be sick. Sickness shouldn't exist. Like God created us to heal. Like we are creation, if you think about it, right? Like a lizard, you can see a lizard gets the little tail cut off and then it grows and we're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, guess what? You have trillions of cells that are doing that within you every second of the day. Does that make sense? So like you are creation. We just have to tap into that. We have to get your nervous system into the rest and digest and heal mode. So it does that, because if it's in the protection mode, it's still creating, it's still trying to manage. But neurologically, really what it is, it's about resources. It's all about resources. And what a lot of people do is that they let's say, I don't feel good, I can't sleep good, I'm getting fat, now I got to go on a diet, now I got to exercise. So they're doing all of these things, but they're already out of balance. So they're adding all these quote unquote healthy things or healing things, but that's taking up resources. And then they wonder, Santi, I'm still falling apart. Like I have done all these things and I'm still gaining weight. I'm starving myself. I'm on the keto, egg only, one leaf of kale a day and I'm still like falling apart, right? And it's like, because you're still adding the stress in what you do. You're still trying to be perfect, you know, with everything that you're doing.
100%.
But your cells are like, hey girl, I got limited resources. I'm not sleeping good, so I'm not recovering. You're not feeding myself enough. So it's completely knocking you even more off balance.
Yeah.
Short term, you might get a little solution like, oh, I lost some weight. Or like, oh, okay, I'm feeling good because I'm exercising. But now then we come addicted to exercise. Which, you know what I'm saying? So like, so it just, it's the root source is like the soul or the spirit, like diving deep into why we need to be perfect, why I can't sleep, right? And then talking about it, or just addressing or acknowledging, you know, the fact that your mom died a long time ago, that mattered. Oh, you know, but people tell me time heals. I'm like, that's fine. But your nervous system doesn't understand that. We have to get you out of that phase, right? And ultimately it's not up to me, it's up to the individual. So in a way, as a physical therapist, a lot of people are like, well, Santi, what's in your scope and not in your scope? And I'm like, listen, guys, I'm here to serve my people. Everything's in my scope as long as I'm not prescribing a medicine or doing a surgery. But I can talk to people about stress. You know, I can talk about nervous system. I can be a friend. I can be somebody. I can build a relationship so they trust me. And then I can empower them to understand I'm just doing education. I'm just like being a coach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm just facilitating their healing process. I'm not doing anything to actually heal them. They have to do it. Like the body has to do it. Their nervous system has to be in the rest and digest and heal mode, so that way they can heal. And as they learn that process and get that new perspective, they're like, oh, so that's what it's like. Because a lot of people don't know that. Like, let's say if your mom was super stressed, you were programmed to be a stressed out nervous system. You got a luxury vehicle, but you got thrown into the Daytona 500 right away, and you're learning neurologically and developing within that system. All you know is like survival mode. So that's your normal. That's your normal. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're cortisol driven, if you're like high RPMs, and then all of a sudden in your 20s, you're like, I'm trying to get pregnant and I can't have a baby.
Yeah.
That's because you don't have resources, because your body's like only has known a 2500 race, and it's not going to have resources to say, yeah, let's create a life. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to shut it down. Does that make sense?
100%.
So we have to give them that perspective. And I'm not sure what you do. Like I get to do, you know, frequency medicine, right? I get to like work with hormones, and I get to like optimize their neurological, their vagus nerve to like decrease, and optimize oscillations that optimize antioxidants or like serotonin and those different things that they can get now that perspective. Because now I can, within like one visit, they're like, oh, how do you feel? And they're like, I don't know. I feel, so I'm not going to describe it for them, but some people have been like, I just feel neutral. I'm like, okay, what's different? I don't know. I just feel more calm and like neutral. I'm like, great. That is Kelly in safety mode. You've only known this. So now you have the perspective. So now when you're out and about and you are dealing with a relationship or your boss or whatever, and you start going back into fight or flight, now you know the difference. So now you can say, oh, I like the Kelly down here. Let me get myself down here, whether it's with what I do or the breathing techniques or mindfulness, you know, there's so many tactics out there that we can dive into, right? But a lot of the individuals nowadays, culturally, especially in America, they don't have that perspective. It's like go mode all the time.
Exactly.
Right? So they don't have a perspective of what is rest and digest. Does that make sense? They think they do. Neurologically and biochemically wise, some people have never known that. With abuse, with trauma, things like that. So that's the root cause. But in my world, people are like, in our medical world, they don't look at that, right? They're like, bull crap. Like, that's no evidence. You're woo woo, whatever. And I'm like, all right.
It's such a shame, because doing people a disservice when you don't allow those things to be known. I don't know if you froze on my end. Oh, there we go.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Yeah. And there's so much what you said, and I completely agree that perspective thing is everything. When we have a perspective, we can see things from a different viewpoint. It's like having a bear right in front of us versus being like on the mountain and being like, okay, I can make a decision about how I can protect myself and be safe. But if it's right in front of you, you have to run from it, attack it, or just play dead. And it's the same thing. Like if a bear's right in front of you, like you're probably not going to fall asleep because that would get you killed. You're not going to go reproduce because that would get you killed. You're not going to try to go heal yourself because that would get you killed. So it's like all these processes, just like you talk about, it's like these are not a priority when your system is just trying to survive. And so I just love that. It is all about perspective. And one thing you're talking about when you're saying about being able to help people and that you're more of a guide for these people and they're doing their own healing, it's so true. It's like you're integrating the knowledge of all the knowledge you have of each system and how that works and how you can heal through that. And that's the huge thing. And I always relate to like the healing process as like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Like she had her ruby slippers the whole time. She had been trying to get home the whole time. She didn't realize the power that she had the whole time until she clicked them together and got herself home. And it's like, that's what we have. Like we have the power within ourselves until somebody like you guides you to show you like, listen, you have the power. You just have to know how to use it. And that's the beauty of it.
What I love, what physical therapists need to understand is that we're poised to help so many individuals if we just get out of our head and stop restricting ourselves because of the profession and the scare tactics that the system does, that it's not in your scope. You shouldn't have a relationship with your clients. Like I remember being told like, you got to keep professional and you got to educate and be the expert and you talk about pain like this. And I'm like, no, you're luxury vehicle. and they're like, oh, that makes sense. So being able to tie that together. And when speaking of the mind, body, spirit, like as PTs, we're positioned in such a great place to understand we should be the movement experts, right? We are like the neurosurgeons of movement, right? And development and all these things. We have people skills because we have to deal with them 2 to 3 times a week, right? So it's like we better like people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we understand how the body works and things like that. So like I'm able to like you said, connect the dots for them to be like, look, this trauma, if you got into a car accident right on this road over here, guess what? Every time you get into the car and you're driving, even though the accident was years ago, if you got rear-ended and you're in a red light, guess what? Your nervous system, you're tensing up inside. You don't physically do it, but your nervous system is like checking. Your eyes are tracking, make sure, okay, is somebody gonna hit me today? No, right? It's tensing up inside, and they're like, why does my neck hurt, Santi? It's not getting any better. So sometimes just making them aware of that. So their homework is while you drive and you get to a stoplight, what is your body telling you? What are you doing? Let's just go through a little breathing exercise that I give them, right? And like, just calm down the nervous system, give yourself some affirmations. Everybody's different. It's not like a cookie cutter thing. That's what I love to do, is that I create a program for the individual, not fit an individual into a program. And that's my pet peeve with medicine. They're just like, diagnosis, protocol, throw everybody in there. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works, because everybody has their own journey, story, whatever you want to call it. So it's very important to understand that. So as PTs, because we understand that movement and how the body works and posture, whatever, then I can tell somebody with TMJ, oh, I've been have TMJ forever. Well, guess what? When she was 8 years old, this is a kind of tough story, but somebody that I treated, she was almost 70 years old, and her whole life she had been dealing with TMJ. She had been dealing with grinding her teeth. She's been through many mouth guards, implants, all these things. Extremely successful individual. A lot of perfectionism, right? Leads to overachieving, right? So real estate mogul, all these different things, but she still was falling apart. Autoimmune wise, couldn't sleep. Well, her story, what she had compartmentalized, was that when she was about 8 years old, she used to get abused, unfortunately, sexually, right? And it was through the uncle. So the uncle was doing the abuse, and she got so mad she wanted defense. She went to fight mode. So she bit down as hard as she could. Well, to protect herself, right? So he hit her so hard that it kind of broke her ear, little bones in her ear, and then TMJ. So, and then on top of that, her parents were like, "You're a bad girl. We're gonna lock you in a cellar for a week." Does that make sense? So She
Gosh.
compartmentalized that. Now she took that trauma through her whole life, not consciously, but subconsciously. It got programmed. It was so terrible that the pain was like, it was so bad that the body's like, I'll deal with that later, right? It just kind of like, boop, puts it away. But neurologically, every night, she was still holding on to that anger, to that like last moment of like desperation. Does that make sense? Now she's in her 60s, and I was teaching a course, and I was going to show the participants like how to palpate some lymph nodes and the TMJ things. And so I went to just say, all right, everybody, so this is how we do it now. And I was just putting my hand near her. She was laying down, and she flinched. She was like, I was like, hey, did you notice that? And she was like, no, notice what? I'm ready. Go ahead, do your thing. She was like, no big deal, right? From a perspective of an outsider, be like, oh, she's calm. She's not fight or flight. Neurologically, I was like, oh, something's off over here, right? So then I said, well, I just want to let you know that when I went to just show them what happened, like to palpate, you flinched, like your nervous system is trying to tell us something. And she kind of got quiet, and she just sat there. And then you just see a tear coming down, right? And then that's when the story came, right? She was like, well, this is what happened to me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, wow. Thank you for sharing, and do you need time? And she was just like, no, I've never even thought about that story. I kept it in me my whole life, So then I said, okay, well, can you see how like that can relate to TMJ? Like you bit down, like you've been like this for 60 years, right? And she was like, oh my gosh, yeah. And I'm like, can you see how like at night you're just like grinding your teeth and you're trying to release, your body's just trying to release that? And she was like, oh my goodness, yes. Then we did a little treatment that I do, but just that acknowledgement. The next day she's texting me, she was like, Santi, man, I'm so grateful. I slept so good. Now that all makes sense, so like she's not healed. That's the start of her healing process, because now she's like, oh, she's putting she's making the connections, right? And it's all about making connections and learning from it to make our nervous system feel safe. It's not about let's fix something. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing broken. It's just an experience, and we have to give the nervous system an acknowledgement, or we have to give it a new perspective on that experience. Hey, look, yes, that was terrible, but look where you're at now. It doesn't cancel that experience out, but this is why you've been holding on to this physical tension, postural grinding, whatever you want to call it, all your life, right? So as PTs, it's awesome that we can like listen, acknowledge, and then help them relieve that body connection to the spirit and the nervous system, so that they can see how it's all working, how it's all working, because it's all, you can't separate it. You can't separate it. It doesn't mean that I'm a mental health counselor. I mean, I work with mental health counselors, I refer out and everything like that. But a lot of the times, most of my clients have been through the system. So then now they're trusting me, and I'm cool. Then they trust me to refer them out to whoever I trust, right? Whether it's EMDR, I'm sure you've heard of that, or like, or whether it's other perspectives that are more neurologically reset driven. Then like, let's talk about it, because most people just talk about it, or they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to relive it. So it's like, how do we reset it or acknowledge? So the permission that I give a lot of my clients is that like, they don't have to like relive traumas or anything like that. I'm like, you just have to acknowledge it within yourself, whether you write it, whether you like process it, and see how that ties into your disease or your pain or your postural issues or whatever, you know what I mean? Lack of sleep. That's how those connections is how they actually heal or understand how to heal. Because to me, healing is an everyday thing, right? It's kind of how it goes.
100%.
But like you said, when you can take the bear out of in front of you and then be like, oh, the bears are down there, look how cute they are, then you can enjoy life.
Exactly. And it's all about that safety. It's like your system is trying to protect you, and that's what your nervous system is doing when it recognizes that there's a lack of safety. And in the case of the woman you're speaking of, like, of course, like she throughout her life was experiencing this like subconscious lack of safety. So her nervous system is on guard to keep her safe, and she wasn't even aware that it was doing that. But that's the beauty of it. It's like, once you can bring awareness to that, it stops growing, and that's the whole beauty of it. It's like, a lot of times we just hold on to things. We don't even realize it. And then when we dive deeper into that subconscious mind that's running 95% of our life, we can start to understand why our body is reacting the way it is, why our nervous system is reacting the way it is, and that it's not something innately wrong with us. It's actually beautiful because it's doing exactly what it was designed to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you mind diving? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you mind diving deeper into like the subconscious mind and like your experience with that? And because this is such a huge part of the healing process, is understanding what's our driving force behind that and where did this develop? Do you mind just talking about your experience with the subconscious mind?
Absolutely. So it's, it goes back to like, ancient wisdom, it's like just basically know thyself, right? Like if you can always go in to work on yourself and stop looking at the external is important to gather information, but ultimately we have to dive deep in and know ourselves and what drives us, to then understand the subconscious and understand that like subconscious is not to work against us. Like you said, it's there to protect us. Like the example of that individual, with the abuse, like the subconscious was protecting her her whole life. Because if you think like I always tell my clients, pain is a privilege. They're like, I'm like, good. Pain is a privilege. You better love it, because that's how your body's communicating with you. Like if there's a fire over here in my clinic, I have to call 911, and then the fire alarms are going off, and they have to know my address to send the resources here to put out the fire. I'm not gonna, but medicine says, hey, there's a fire here. And then medicine says, oh, you know what? Let me just put you on hold, and let's just block it for a while and see if it goes away. Well, guess what? The fire is burning, so they're like, oh, okay, I get it. There's that aspect of pain that helps us understand our subconscious, because the pain is the signal. And then it's like, what is it? Is it like, I didn't sleep good last night? Is that why I have a headache? Or, am I stressed out about something? Or that I have too much junk food last night? Whatever, right? Like, am I going through menopause? It doesn't matter. Am I an athlete and I overtrained and I didn't rehydrate and I'm, whatever it might be, right? It's like, what does it tell me? So you can find that quote unquote root cause, right? And then you can deal with it. You don't have to go take the bear right in front of you. You're like, you have to kind of like gather the information and be like, oh, you know what? I think maybe I should, let me drink a little water, and then maybe not train so hard today. Oh, my headache went away. Does that make sense? Like, so just understanding those things. So the subconscious, what it's doing is, as you dive deep and you know yourself, then you start understanding that subconscious. And it's not like it's so complicated, really. If you understand safety versus not safe, that's all the subconscious is worried about. Right. Now, that's just the simplistic neurological subconscious. Then there's the cultural, experiential programming that happens, whether it's like through TV, through our parents, through our culture, through our families. Like all that stuff is being programmed in there. But at some point, as we start becoming adults, we question those things, and then we start diving into what works for us and what doesn't. And we have to let go of the things that aren't serving us, and then keep doing the things that are giving us great times in this lifetime, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's not that like you're not conscious of it, but there is a subconscious aspect. But when we can connect the aspect of why I might be feeling this way, that's your subconscious. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like,
absolutely.
Like the experience that you had, let's say with this lady, her experience was terrible. Subconsciously, it was like cut off, but it still was there. When she made the connection, she was like, oh, okay, it's over. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like the bear is no longer there. It doesn't undo the trauma, but now that subconsciously it processed. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Let me start working on being aware of when I'm grinding my teeth. Does that make sense? And then now practicing that aspect of awareness rather than like not even being aware of it. Right? So that's when you transition from that subconscious to conscious once you acknowledge or you connect the dots. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And at some point, we should all know our body so well that it's like we're like Neo from the Matrix, right? We're like, you see it all. Like, you you listen to your body, you're in tune with your body all day. Am I tired? Am I tired? Am I lazy? So I just feel like doing nothing, or no, you know what? I did have a, and then you just create the experience that you want based on what you want to do, because you're connected to yourself and your nervous system. And then you just make the choices that are going to get you into the higher vibes of like joy, peace, happiness, all these different things, right? Because we don't want to be in shame and guilt. We tend to be very driven and programmed to stay down there, because in a way it's culturally, that's how it's easier to control our nervous system. Let's just say keep us in fear. Let's say medical system, they keep us in fear. We're like, oh no, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's like
100%.
Once you understand, then you're like I said, you're like, if anybody's seen the Matrix, or like you could just see through the veil, right? You're like Dorothy. You can just tap your heels anytime you want and get out of there and go back to Kansas, like
Exactly.
It's
You just
really,
never knew you had the power.
and that's when it becomes so much fun, because now you're empowered to do anything you want in your life. Now you're creation, and you're creating the life that you want. And understanding when you have little hiccups, it's just part of the experience. You process it and then you move on. Right? You're completely under control. And as a perfectionist, hey, that'd be, I think people be like, I'm in the control. Then it's awesome, right? Then it's like, then you don't struggle anymore. Does that make sense?
Exactly. You get
like,
your
peace.
100%.
God wants us to be in peace.
Yeah.
It's like joy, peace. All these emotions down here, shame, guilt, sadness, they lower our vibe, right? They're like, right? But that's part of the experience. Like, God gave us everything to experience it. Some of us have severe experiences that makes us feel way shame, right? But it's still the same emotion. Does that make sense? It's just how long you stay there. So the goal is like, experience it. Oh, okay, that's what that's like. And then get back into peace. Maybe go to joy and then go back to peace. The good ones aren't that great either, right? If you're always in joy, right? It's like, oh, I'm overcompensating with joy. That's using up resources. So it's like, have your joy, but then get back to peace. Just get back to like peace, just present moment, that's what the nervous system likes. It likes experiencing, but you always want to reset yourself back to peace, and that's where healing happens, right? That's where you can experience life. That's where you can sleep, no brain fog. If you're an athlete, perform and then recover and then perform again, right? So it's everything about balance. Does that answer the subconscious?
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love how you talk about the energy too, because I'm a huge believer in energy frequencies. And that was a game changer for me to understand, like, oh my gosh, I lived my whole life in shame and guilt. Like, even when I was happy, you felt guilty that you're happy. It's like, it's amazing when you have that perspective. And it's like, now you can start leading life with curiosity. Like, oh, I have a little pain here, instead of being like, oh God, and what's going to happen tomorrow and next week and the next month. Like, that's that fear that continues, rather than being like, okay, what is that telling me? And it's like,
exactly.
It's such a game changer when you can start seeing things and be curious about what your body and your mind are telling you, and then explore it, versus being like, let me suppress it. Let me not honor my needs in this moment. Let me keep everything under control and just not do anything. And I think a lot of times as a culture, we're taught that, like, you just need to be productive. I don't care how you feel in this moment. I don't care what you need. If you need a 5 minutes of rest, too bad, just keep going. And it's like, we get in this mindset, and it's like, of course we all feel like we're on a treadmill that we can't keep up with, because we're told to just kind of keep everything low key and low, and just keep moving forward regardless of that. And
it's a terrible culture driven kind of experience, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, understanding that we're in the control, those factors will always be there. That push, that commercial will always be there. That how to lose weight quick book will always be there. That whatever next diet, the whatever shoes that are best for your feet. I mean, I deal with this all the time, and I'm like, they're just, they're just stuff, like, if you know yourself. I'll give you an example of me. So most of my life, people are like, oh, Santi, you're so chill. You have such a good energy. Oh, you're so calming. And I believed, and I was like, yeah, I am. Like, wow, I am. I'm like, that's what I believed, right? I'm like, yes, I am a happy-go-lucky guy. And I'm here to help people. and I never get mad. I never get angry. This is just how I am. You know, I'm always just chill. Everybody's like, I love you, Santi. And I'm like, and that's what I believed.
Yeah.
Then, and as a kid, that was the environment I was in, you know. But there was, I had a dad. My father's always in joy. He was always like goofball, and I was like, man, it was like I definitely felt loved, right? Like I never not felt loved as a kid. So I had a very good childhood. Goofball dad, mom amazing, pure love. But over time, I started realizing like there was some manipulation going on from from my mother's side of it, and I love her. She's my biggest gift. But there's a little bit of like narcissism in there, right? That she's unaware, obviously, but I was unaware too, because that was my environment. But I'm happy-go-lucky. But as I start diving deep into myself and what drives me, you know, especially in my 20s, one time, like there was always conflict when there was like good times in my life, or like when I met my wife, or like there was always drama, and I'm like, what the, why is there so much drama? You know, like for my mom, she's amazing, but it was like, what the heck's going on, you know? And as the calm Santi that's, you know, one day got so mad, like all of a sudden I just got so pissed off. It just came out of nowhere. I mean, I like crushed the phone in my hand. My wife was like, are you okay? And I was like, you just hung up on me, give me another phone. And I was like, ah, and then I broke that one too. And then we lived in this old house, and I punched the wall, like broke my hand in 3 different pieces, like, but like I didn't, that subconscious part of me was in there. I had no idea. Like all the little programming that I was unaware of just came out in that one big explosion. Does that make sense? But me, like you, I also grew up in a very shame and guilt-driven environment. Growing up in Colombia, Catholic, you know, there's this whole culture thing, and the way that it's passive aggressive, and you don't just say what you're told, and boys don't cry, and men are macho, and women are dramatic, and they complain too much, you know, all these different things that are being programmed, but you're unaware. Well, it wasn't like I'm gonna blame her, and I'm like, I can't believe, you know, like I'm so grateful that that experience happened, because when that happened, I was like, honey, let's go to Walgreens. I need to tape up my hand. The next day was my daughter's like 2nd or 3rd birthday or something like that, my first daughter. And there was always drama. So, but it hit me. I was like, oh my goodness, okay, I get it. Like I have anger. I can get angry, you know, but I made the pact with myself. I said, you know what? This is where my healing gonna start, where like that will never happen again. Not because I'm gonna blame somebody. I was like, thank you. Thank you for giving me that lesson, to where I now know that I can either hurt somebody else's face potentially or myself, because I completely lost it. Calm Santi never gets angry. Everybody loves, you know. And I was like, oh my gosh. You know, but of course, the programming of this, of going to the shame and guilt, now I had to be shame and guilt, right? And I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But I had to get out of that quickly. I was like, no, this is a good lesson. And now that will never happen again. So that was a practice. Now I'm consciously practicing dealing with my family member, and recognizing, not being angry, being like, thank you, but then also recognizing the physical adrenaline, what was happening, that I was completely unaware before. It was happening before, you know. Why did Santi, so calm dude, bite his nails most of his life? Right? Like I was like, oh my gosh, that probably, there was some nervousness, some anxiety within me that I was completely unaware of. Now I'm aware of it. I'm like, oh, okay. I like to please people. I like to make sure everybody's okay. I need to make sure, which is what gives me, which is my superpower that I have now, to be able to read people and recognize their nervous system. Does that make sense? Because I had to become so in tune with my family member, with my mom. I had to really tune into her. You know, and again, she was not abusive. It's just how she worked, or how she works, right? That I had to like really tune in, because I'm like, what does she actually mean? What I'm feeling this way, but I can't feel, because that now it's my fault that I'm making her feel this way, you know. So like all these subconscious kind of programming that you're unaware of, that when you're older, you have to dive deep. All these little experiences, especially the big ones, are the biggest lessons. That like, pay attention, whether it's a disease, whether it's an autoimmune, whether it's a big fight, whatever it is, those are the greatest opportunities to like make the healing curve go pshoo, right?
Yeah,
Whatever it
absolutely.
might be. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's just that shift in mind perspective, like what's happening to me versus how is it happening for me? And that's
Exactly.
it. That's everything. Because so many times you can kind of get stuck in that victim mentality, like, why is this happening to me? Why am I feeling like this?
Right.
Versus like, how can I use this to move forward in my life? How is this, what
Yep.
lesson is this teaching me? Just like you're talking about. And it's like, thank you so much for sharing that example, because I'm sure it's so relatable. Like, I know there's things like in my life, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been through things like that. You don't even realize that what's brewing below the surface. And then it like comes up and
Right.
you're like, oh, okay, what just happened there? Where is this
Yeah.
coming from? Like,
No idea.
it's amazing like how much is below the surface that we're not aware of, because we're just like living life and we're always just going. And then, things happen where it does kind of bubble up to the surface, and you just
Right.
realize that there's so many layers to every one of us that you have to start to peel back and understand. It's like once you peel back one layer, you see another layer, and it's like
Yeah.
it's an ongoing journey in life. You're always evolving, you're always growing. I think that's the whole purpose of life. Like, none of us are perfect. It's just like understanding ourselves so that we can elevate ourselves, so that we can elevate others. So
Exactly. And the goal with that experience and with anybody's experience is, and for listeners really, like, this is the biggest take home, I think, because
Mhm,
this is what a lot of clients appreciate in when we discuss this, is
mhm,
that yes, I punched the wall. Yes, I made the choice. Now it's in my conscious. Now I can
mhm,
see it, the veil. I'm like, oh,
mhm,
okay, let's work on that, right? Um, I'm 40, I'll be 47 in a month. Does that make sense? Like this, I was
mhm,
like maybe late 20s.
mhm.
It
Yeah,
wasn't like I was like, I'm cured. No,
yeah.
like it, like there was a period of shame. Like I broke my hand. The next day I had to go face a bunch of people and family members at a
Mhm,
birthday party and friends. And
mhm.
one of my biggest values is like, don't just be honest. You don't lie. Like I don't lie. But
Yeah.
guess what I had to do the next day? Hey, what happened to your hand? Oh, well, I was punching a bag. I was at the gym, blah, blah. I had to like
Yeah.
make up some bullcrap story
Mhm,
and lie to like 20 to 30 people.
mm.
Then I
Yeah.
had to lie to people at work. What happened to your hand? Oh, well, da, da, da. All the clients. I mean, I was seeing 25, 30 patients a day. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, here I'm nonstop
Mhm.
having telling a lie
Yeah.
because I was ashamed
Mhm,
of what I had done, or because I didn't want to put the blame on somebody else made me do this.
mhm.
So either way, like I was like in a lose-lose situation. Like
Yeah.
I can throw mom under the bus,
Mhm,
even though I'm not understanding. I had just learned like, oh, okay, it has nothing to do with her, it has to do with me.
mhm.
I was just realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing a pattern in all this.
Mhm.
And there was some frustration and anger, and it led to this. So now what? That's when I had to start learning myself and catching myself and being triggered, like whether it's biting my nose. What was I doing? Oh, you know what? I just had a conversation with her. So, oh, I just had a conversation with my sister. You know what I mean? So it was all these different things that like I would I had to like practice and catch myself in the physical symptoms, quote unquote,
Yeah.
so I can connect it to the experience, which might have been a phone conversation, might have been a family situation, might have been a little jab,
Mhm,
whatever it is. But it had, for me, I took it with my mindset of an athlete. I was like,
mhm.
all right, this is the game.
Yeah.
This is the
Yep.
game for me
Yeah.
to eventually find peace. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be joy and overcompensate the shame and guilt and sadness that I'm feeling here, that
Mhm,
I'm grieving this relationship that I thought I had. It's
mhm.
like I literally had to be true and honest with myself and be like, where am I at? And how do I get to peace as
Yeah.
fast as possible? Right.
Right.
And sometimes it might take a day where you're like frustrated and you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, I can't believe I could have said this and should have said that.
Mhm,
But now, again, a decade later, now I'm at peace. Now I can have the experience and I can, we're not in the same situation, right? And
mhm,
there's forgiveness, there's all these different things, and I've learned so much. But now it's like, okay, cool. That was the experience.
mhm,
I have my feeling, my emotion. Men can have emotions, right? It's all
mhm.
right.
Absolutely.
Like,
Mhm.
man, that kind of sucks. Well,
Yeah.
all right. Well, let me get back myself to peace. And I'm
Yeah.
back at peace. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And I can sleep
Absolutely.
and I don't bite my nails, all these different
Mhm.
things. So
Yeah.
everybody's goal should be like, how do I have these ups and downs, but then get into peace and then
Mhm.
enjoy the experience of joy,
Yeah.
and then somebody dies. Oh, this is what
Mhm.
sadness and grief feels like, and get back to peace, right? And that's life,
Mhm.
it's what we're here to experience. That going back
100.
to Dorothy, she knew the
Yeah.
whole time. She should have,
Mhm.
but she had the whole experience, right? She
Yeah.
had the whole experience of the monkeys, and there's a big psychological.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you dive into that, we can. But she needed to have the experience. She had to have that journey to learn from
Yeah.
the lion and learn from the tin man and learn from like
Yeah.
all our lessons of our nervous system, believe it or
Mhm.
not.
Exactly. It's like that saying, like, good sailors don't get created on smooth seas. It's like you have to be in the waves to become a good sailor. It's like
Exactly.
that's life. You have to go through things, good and bad, to understand like how to create a more harmonious life for yourself. So
Exactly.
yeah, I love that.
Exactly.
And I think it's so interesting too when you talk about the emotions, like it's so true. You have to, you go up, but then you go down, but you want to kind of stay in that middle ground of peace. It's like very much the same with our nervous system. Like we're going to hit those
Yep.
spikes with the sympathetic, we're going to hit those, lower ones with the parasympathetic, but we want to be that nice gentle wave of back and forth.
Yeah.
And like that's health for nervous system, health for emotion.
It's
It's
healthy.
health for everything. Yeah, exactly.
It's the wave of life, right? We're here to just
Mhm.
vibe with life,
Yeah.
and then go whichever we're supposed to go. But for the most
Yeah.
part, that's if you change your perspective
Mhm.
and view everything as a gift, you
Mhm.
know, that God or Spirit's given you to have an experience. And of
Mhm.
course, there's so many experiences that, like, so many people that I treat, that like nobody deserves some of the experiences that I've heard in this room, like terrifying, right?
Yeah.
But but as a collective, we all need to learn from each other. We all need to raise the consciousness of this world, because now, like, I'm hearing this lady's perspective, and it's like, gosh, that is terrible, right?
Mhm.
And I can feel that with her.
Mhm.
But then the way she compensated, and the way that she made continue on living, and made this successful real estate company, all these different things, right? Like, that's amazing. I'm like, gosh, under those circumstances, your nervous system overcompensated, so that way you can just keep yourself busy doing all these different things, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And then there's other people that are like, they take away their favorite teddy bear, and then it's like they can't live life. They're like depressed and they can't leave their house, and you're just like, and you're not gonna be like, well, it's just a teddy bear. Like,
Mhm.
hey, nervous system, to them, it is like they're in freeze mode. They
Yeah.
don't want to live life. They don't want to hop on the wave of experience. They was, and
Mhm.
and for me as a practitioner, like, taking in all those other people's experiences just makes me like appreciate life a lot more.
Mhm.
Um, appreciate like the human spirit, right?
Mhm.
And but also appreciate that subconscious and that spirit, mind, body, spirit, subconscious world of how everything is connected. It just is. It's hard to even just describe it. That's the part of the experience.
Mhm. It
But
is.
take it as a
Mhm.
gift. Take it as a gift, and you'll see that the nervous system likes that, because that's how it learns.
Mhm.
How do we know shame if we never experienced that? How do we know anger if I never experienced it? Now, with that experience, I'm like, holy cow! So that's anger. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, dang. So like now somebody cuts me off at the, and it's like, ooh, uh, that pissed me off. Oh, okay, no, that's angry, and then you just move on. Like, then
Mhm.
I'm over. I get back into peace, right? Because, all right, I'm in charge of how long I want to be angry for.
Mhm.
I'm in charge of how long I want to feel anxiety and bite my nose and worry about, like, you know,
Mhm.
the next family outing, or like the next patient that's coming in with all these trauma, or whatever it might be. Make sense?
Yeah,
It's more like,
absolutely.
hey, let's have fun.
Yeah, no, I like how you talk about too, because it's such a reality. Like, it doesn't mean that we're gonna be happy all day. Like, that's not
No,
reality. It'll never happen. It really shouldn't, because that's not good either. But it's
right?
like having that choice. And I love how you use the word choice, is like having the choice to, like, how long are you gonna stay in it? Things will happen external to you that you can't control, but like how you respond to it is your choice. And how long you
Yep.
respond in a certain way is your choice. And that's the most empowering thing you can say and do, is just recognizing you have the power, no, regardless of what happens outside of you. So
Yeah,
I
and
love
and it's
that.
also and it's also like you have the power to create the experience that you want to. Like,
Yeah.
that's when it really gets fun.
Yeah.
That's when it really gets fun, because when you're in that peace mode and you're just like it is literally like Neo just dodging the bullets, like,
Hmm.
and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is fun. And then you see the connections. I mean, it sounds silly, but like, because I'm in the present moment, and I'll see all the little divine interventions and divine clues that God is giving us all the time.
Yeah.
A simple example, and this is how ridiculous I get, because to me it's fun. It's like
Yeah.
it's a fun game. Um, Driving with my daughter, she's learning to drive, but then all of a sudden her boyfriend called,
Mhm.
and she calls him Rat. She's like, "Hey, Rat, what's up?" Blah blah blah. And I'm cool. I'm driving. Literally, as she's answering the phone, calling him Rat, a car drives up. There's a bunch of cars, right? We're in traffic. A
Mhm.
car drives up, and the license plate is like 3 something Rat. You know,
Oh my
and I'm
gosh.
like, "Hey, Ava, look," and she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's Rat." So like, making our kids conscious of like all the
Funny.
little things and having
Yeah.
those conversations, right? But like, stuff like that happens to me all the time. It's
Hmm.
fun. It's like, oh, look at the little connections, right? Or
Yeah.
whenever you meet a client, there's always a connection. Like, it's not even like 6 degrees of separation. It's like 1 degree sometimes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
you're just like, this is awesome. This is like,
Mhm.
you're Dorothy. You want to go to Kansas, or you want to go back to Magic Land, and then you come back to, you choose. And
Yeah.
it's so much fun. Then you're not anxious. You're not,
Hmm.
you get out of that world of worry and trying to be perfect. So then you realize, like, oh, there's a divine plan.
Yeah.
It's not like, I just got to do nothing. Like, no,
Mhm.
like, you're making the choices, and
Mhm.
as you make those choices, you're like, oh, cool. I'm on the right path. Oh, I see, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's just trying to follow the yellow brick road. But
Yep.
does that make sense? And
Yeah. Oh,
eventually,
totally. Yeah. It's like having that vision and recognizing, like, okay, where do you want to go? And then it's like the universe is just putting the things in your way to help you get there.
yeah,
So it's like, where you have to know where you want to go, but it's like recognizing that things are working for you to get to that place. You
always.
just have to be specific about where you actually want to take your life. And it's
Exactly.
like,
Even
I think,
even if it's just terrible experiences, like,
yeah,
I mean, I hear pretty terrible things in here, right?
mhm,
And
yeah,
those individuals, because of those experiences, they are so much more enlightened. And I'm not saying like there's a race to becoming more, right? But
yeah,
like, sometimes when you know a low, or a pain, or a trauma, like, and
mhm,
you overcome it, it's like, wow, like, you truly, like, are super powerful. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Um, we all have that superpower,
mhm,
but you could say, fortunately or unfortunately, some of those individuals that had terrible experiences, their perspective, like, their range of that, like, wave is so grand, that it's like they're like, oh, we can handle anything, but also now
yeah,
we can create anything. Does
mhm.
that make sense?
Yeah, like
And
cultivates that resilience.
exactly,
Mhm,
and not only that, when I see them become empowered, and they recognize the difference that they can make in other individuals through their stories, that's when it's like, wow. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, I'm
mhm,
like, I got mad and I punched the wall and I broke my hand. I'm not undoing it. Does that make sense? People can
yeah,
relate to that.
yeah,
But like,
100%.
I've never been through like a death of a loved one, or
Mhm,
like a terrible abuse. Well, you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, I haven't, so
mhm,
I can't relate. Like, I can
mhm,
be there for the individual, but I don't know how to overcome that. Like, I can just be like, I'm here for you. Hug,
mhm,
a frequency sticker,
yeah,
like, talk about it, but like, I can
yeah,
just be there and be a safety net. But really,
mhm,
when you watch those individuals like just blossom, and then
mhm,
how they help so many other people because of that, it's
mhm,
like, wow, man, that is so cool. It is so cool.
yeah,
And
absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
that's what you're doing with this podcast. Like, I'm sure you're bringing so
Oh,
many people
thank
in
you.
that they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so awesome!" Right? They listen in, they're like, "Oh, that's me," or like, "Wow,"
Yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
powerful.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I love about it is that you get so many people who've been through just these incredibly like tough times in their life, or awful struggles or awful stories, and then they've, so many people I have had on here have like just transformed their life to use it as their greatest gift, and now they're
Mhm.
serving the past version of themselves. And I think
Right,
that's what we're all here to do, is like take those struggles. Obviously it's hard when you're in the thick of it to see it
right.
like that, but when you can get into a place where you're not in true survival mode and you can start seeing how can I use this to serve the world and elevate other people's energy as well as my own? It's like, that's a game changer. And I really believe like that's how you discover your purpose in life, is like taking those struggles and challenges and being like, okay, how can I use this to help other people? So yeah, it's incredible.
Because you mentioned energy, like,
Mhm.
guess what? That is a thing, you know,
Mhm.
it is a thing. You can walk into a room and you're like, oh, you know, what happened,
Totally.
right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, in my neighborhood when we first moved in, like one out of very random, but like a neighbor got murdered. Unfortunately, it's like a young teen, right?
Oh,
So like
wow.
I'm like going to work, open the door, I open the door, I come out, and then the kid's brother was in my lawn just sobbing, right? But it like I hadn't even seen him, right? I'm just closing the door, and like as I'm turning around, I just felt this like, oof. It was
Mm.
just
Mhm.
out something energetically was way off. Does that make sense?
Oh, wow,
And
totally.
then I was like, "Oh, are you okay? What happened? Oh, you need something? Oh, my brother," you know? And that's when it was like, "Whoa, does that make sense?" So
Mhm.
like that's in the negative aspect, right? That's our gut feeling. That's part of what I tell my clients on how to be in tune with their nervous system.
Mhm.
There's pain,
Yeah.
then there's also like our gut feeling, butterflies. There's a reason why there's that gut brain connection. Like your body is like a big sensory organ that's telling you all those things. And the
Mm.
root cause, you know, getting back to that part, the root cause of everything is that vibe, that energy
Mhm.
that you can tune into to really become like unstoppable, right?
Mhm.
And on as a healed individual or healing individual, right? You put out that energy. You know, you can walk into a room and they're like, oh, okay, you
Mhm.
know, like we can attract individuals, you can level people up
Mhm.
without even saying a word. Does that make sense? Like we can do all those things.
Mhm.
So as you help all your clients and all the listeners here that are trying to heal, or they're also individuals that help people heal, like understand that is the root cause. Like level up your vibe, put it out there,
Mhm.
recognize that that is making a difference, but it's part of that like unseen subconscious kind of world where it's like, man, I really like hanging out with Kelly. She's so cool, right? It's one of those things like
Yeah.
when I saw you at the conference a while back, a
Mhm.
few weeks ago, I was like,
Yeah.
you know, some people,
Yes. Good.
oh,
Yeah.
love her, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's other people that, again, it's not a bad thing, but you hang
Mhm.
out with them, you're like, oh, that's cool, and then you're like, whew, well, man, that was I need to recharge,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
it, that's part of that energy that I think
Mhm.
you've mentioned. That's the way I see
Yeah.
it, and I get people to recognize that as well. You know, as
Yeah.
part of the healing process. First, in tune with your body, your physical, and then the spiritual is like, what do you feel out there? Like,
Mhm.
what is that person telling you when they're talking to you? They might be saying something. I'm okay. I'm good. But what do
Yeah.
you feel? I'm like, I'm feeling a lot of sadness from this one.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah. You can, and the more
So
you get in tune with your own energies, you can start sensing other people's energies very well too. Like I'm a
exactly.
total believer in
Yes.
everything you said. It's like, and it's, when you have like two pianos on other sides of the room and they're like tuned and hitting the same note, like you have
Yep.
that like resonance between
Yep.
them. It's the same thing with people. Like as you elevate, like you may lose friends because they're not elevating with you. And that's part of
That's life.
life. And it's like, that's actually a good thing when you start like not having these people that drag you down in your life, like you
Right.
start elevating yourself. And that's the beauty of it. It's like I think we all have a responsibility to elevate our own energy. So then now we can elevate other people's energy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. And there is science behind that. It's the
Yeah.
quantum field. I mean, it's not
Exactly.
just like woo woo, but it's the
Nope.
quantum field. We're all living in it. And they've shown that like the energy field like is extends,
It
it's
is.
like right now we're sharing energy and
Yep.
we're states away, like anyone who listens to this episode, you're going to be sharing energy from us and with us. And that's the beauty of it. It's like you can talk to somebody across the world and still share energy because that's just how it works. It's part of this massive field that we're all interconnected and we all have the
Always.
responsibility to elevate ourselves and others in the process.
No, all like I'm telling you, you are so correct. It's how the world works
Mm-hmm.
in the quantum field, right? That is God's world, right? Of creation and quantum and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And uh when you so as a practitioner, what I
Mm-hmm.
would recommend most people do if you're out there practitioners, also if you're healing, but as practitioners, the more you understand your body and all your pains and your aches and your injuries, regardless, and you understand them, and you know thyself, it's like, oh, I have a knee pain. I know my pains, right? I know my body's so well that when I'm helping somebody, I'm just listening, doing the subjective intake or whatever, and I'm just taking it in. I'm like, okay. People are like, how did you know? Like, and it's like, because if I start feeling a headache, I'll be like, do you get headaches? They're like, yeah, the words, I get migraines all the time. Or if I start feeling something in my throat, like, man, I can't get the words out. I'm like, it's like, it's like, I know that's not me. So then, hey, do you have any difficulty like expressing yourself, or like, are you in a relationship? Or like, how'd you know? Like, and it's only because I know my body so well that whatever the field is putting out, whatever their field or their energy, whatever they're putting out, then I know it's not me.
Yeah.
If I start feeling something, I'm like, oh, something's off, right? Like we're now talking to you, like my heart has been full the whole time. Right? But like, it's not like my head, nothing like it was just like, okay, so that's what we as a practitioner is not woo-woo. That's how you start making a big difference.
Exactly.
That is how we start as a collective, like literally healing this world. People are like, Santi, what are you here to do? I'm like, oh, just heal humanity. That's a little bit. And I'm like, I don't know, man. That's just what comes out. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless.
Yeah. And it's like you touch one person, you help one person, and then they touch people. And it's like, it's just creating that source of energy and source of healing that you can now spread that. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, it's a ripple effect, you create a ripple and this just continues on to other people. If you help a mother, you're helping their children, or helping their spouse, like you're helping everyone by allowing one person to heal. So that's the beauty of what you do. And it's amazing.
No, it's so amazing. So amazing. I'm so glad that, when we first started talking, you were like, oh, we'll see where it leads. It's like, well, it led to quantum and energy. I love it.
We've covered everything. I know.
People are like, what?
I know. This
learn about the nervous system.
I love it.
But that ties in the subconscious, the body, the spirit, right? It ties it all together, because that's literally the root of it all. Like when you can get to that point where you can know yourself, know your history, know your journey, know your injuries, know your experiences, then now you're like, again, now you like tap into that quantum field, because whatever you feel that's not you, you're like, well, what was that? What's going on over here? Then I'll step outside and it's like somebody fell at the, it's like, it's weird.
Yeah.
But like, it's fun. It's like you have superpowers. Like you're like, what just happened out there? You go out there and somebody just fell in the gym or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Not just now, but in general, like that's happened, right? Or the simple little things like, I think of you, and then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, you text me like, hey, Santi. I'm like, it's like, you just start seeing that.
Yeah. And when you're open to it and you can trust your own messages, it's like you can see more of that happening. Like it happens much more than you realize. You just have to be like aware of it again, that it is all happening. It's amazing. Yeah.
I know.
Well, I feel like we could talk all day, but for the sake of
exactly. I was like, I don't
want
want to take a lot of
want to respect your time. But so for anyone who wanted to connect with you, how can they find you?
Well, so they can Facebook, right? They can do Santi Villamil, and then on Instagram it's Santi the Physio Sensei, and that's about it. And then you can message me through there. I can give you my phone number. I'm working on a website, but again, right now my practice is so busy through word of mouth, and I'm trying to transition more to like the mentoring other individuals. One of the things that I do, and I teach some courses, is like we're talking about frequencies, right? So ANF Therapy. I'm blessed to be one of 2 instructors in the US. So now it's my responsibility to like heal humanity through frequency medicine and bring that over to the US. So I'm super excited for that. And I'm here just to serve you as well, any way that I can help you. I think you know me, but most people that don't, when I say that I'm here for you, I'm literally here for you.
True.
You just send me a DM and I will answer it. Like there's no like, oh, there's this guy up in this mountain, then I have to like trek all this. No, like I'm here for you any way that I can serve you, and help you heal, or help other individuals heal, whatever. I'm here for you. Okay.
So love
and
it.
I hope everything makes sense. I know it was a big spectrum of things, but like I think one of the key things is root cause is multifactorial, and there's many variables, but the main variables are going to be, where are you spiritually, where are you body wise, are you connecting to your body, and then also, you know, where you're at with your mindset and you know, and your relationships, you know, because like we finished off talking about the collective, right? So everything matters, and the sooner you can get yourself out of that shame and guilt, like Kelly said, right, and into like peace, and then just experience the wave, then you'll start having fun, you know.
100%. That's it. And just understanding how everything is connected. There's nothing that is disconnected in any way. Nothing is an island in your life. So just understanding everything's going to play on each other. And once you start to understand that and understand the importance of the root cause and your energy, it's a game changer. So I hope, and I know that anyone listening to this episode, it's going to serve you in a way that will make you think differently about your health, your life, relationships, and just take any little golden nugget that you've gotten from this conversation and use it to move your life forward. So thank you, Santi, for everything today. I genuinely enjoyed this conversation so much.
You're amazing. And, you know, just to finish off, like as simple as you want to make it, like Kelly said, all you got to do is, if you know where your home is within your body and your mind and your spirit, all you got to do is just tap the little heels, you know, there's no place like home, like Dorothy. And then you get yourself back into peace mode, you know, at least you're not, get your nervous system under control.
That's it. That's everything, you know, it really is. And it's like, once you just do the tiniest thing, it'll snowball into something bigger. So just give yourself the honor of doing just something for yourself today that moves yourself forward. So thank you, Santi. And again, everyone, thank you for listening. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast. Please leave any questions or comments you have for either one of us. And thank you again for spending your precious time with me.
Hey, love you, girl, and love everybody.
Right back at you.